Deep in the swirling mists of Appalachia, a sturdy cabin stands the test of time. Music makes the house a home, and the banjo rings out a tune. But listen closely. This is not the song of an immigrant. This is Walker Calhoun, a Cherokee national treasure. Walker began learning music of the mountains, indigenous and European, early in the 1900s. By that time, his people had been playing banjo and fiddle tunes for hundreds of years. That cultural exchange went both ways. To this day, Appalachian music has a haunting, wistful sound. Even when the tunes are European, the sound is purely Appalachian. That sound is a living testimony to the confluence of cultures, white, black, and indigenous, that we know and love as Appalachian culture. So come with me into these hills and hollers, and let's explore creating home in Appalachia through indigenous voices. The story begins in the forest, one of the most ancient and biodiverse places on Earth. But not just for flora and fauna. These hills were always alive with a diversity of people as well. Cherokee was just one language along the trade routes, and superhighways we call rivers. There were also Seneca and Tuscarora, Delaware and Wyandot, Shawnee and Tutelo, and more. All of them were creating home in Appalachia, and all of them lived in partnership with the forest. Treasured medicinal plants and seasonal fare like ginseng, ramps, black cohosh, golden seal, strawberries, blackberries, chokecherries. The list goes on and on. To this day, 50% of the medicinal herbs, roots, and barks in the North American herbal supply chain are native to the Appalachian Mountains. Indigenous people knew and loved these gifts of the forest, and immigrants were quick to learn their value. Native people planted and extended the range of food-producing trees like black walnut, hickory, pecans, and of course, chestnut. Trade routes and rivers were conduits for transcontinental trade, from coast to coast and from the Arctics to the tropics. We know that people in Florida treasured items made from walrus ivory, and people in Alaska adorned themselves with feathers of equatorial birds. All of that trade passed through Appalachia. Many of the highways we use today have simply paved over those same footpaths used for millennia. Along the way were countless towns and villages, and every cabin had a garden. There were patches devoted to native plants like berries and other fruits. But indigenous people were some of the most advanced agriculturalists on earth. To this day, corn remains one of their greatest achievements. It is grown on almost every continent, the most abundant cereal crop on earth. Today it sweetens your foods and drinks, yields sustainable and biodegradable plastics, and even makes your car go vroom. But here's the thing. There is no such thing as wild maize. It was created by hybridizing teosinte grain with sturdy prairie grasses. And corn is just the beginning. The most popular fruit in the world is the tomato. And if you think it's a vegetable, it's still the most popular one in the world. It is a veritable superfood. Scientists just keep discovering new health benefits. But tomatoes are just one of the plants that native people hybridized from nightshade. Now, nightshade is a deadly poison, but it has yielded a dizzying array of useful plants. Peppers, sweet and hot. Potatoes, eggplant, sorrel, tobacco, petunias, and much, much more. All of these were created by native agriculturalists thousands of years ago. Think about that. There is nothing more central to the idea of home than the kitchen table. And tonight, people all over the globe will sit down to a home-cooked meal featuring Native American gifts to world cuisine. Can you imagine an Italian meal without tomato sauce, or Irish stew without potatoes? What would Thai food be without peppers? All of those foods grew here in Appalachia before they were adopted far and wide. Corn, beans, and squash, the three sisters, have graced Appalachian tables since time immemorial. Time will not allow us to examine all the ways that native folk tales and legends have shaped the stories and tall tales told around the hearths of Appalachia. But let me give you just one example. Everyone in America knows about leprechauns. They are, of course, the magical creatures who created Lucky Charms cereal. But native people also had their own versions of little people. No doubt you all know Highway 219. Some of you may have driven it here today. It lies upon the footsteps of the old Seneca Trail. If you follow it south into West Virginia, you will come to one of the most iconic photographed places in Appalachia, the majestic Seneca Rocks. A Seneca village once stood near the site of the visitor center today. But the Seneca name for that place is The Little People Live There. The little people make their homes in the fissures of rocks and the hollows that honeycomb the stones there. All indigenous people have stories about the little people, and the Cherokee are no exception. We call them Yunwitsunsti. If you hike the backcountry very much at all, you might encounter a strange cairn, just a pile of pebbles, but sometimes several feet high. Look around you. Nearby, you will almost always find a cleft in a rock or a tiny cave entrance. These are the places known to the old ones as dwellings of the little people. To show honor and respect, a traveler would leave an offering, a scrap of food or a small treat, or at very least, a pebble, just to say, I know that you are here, and I thank you for safe passage. What is this? A common myth? Some sort of primitive archetype? A children's story? Perhaps. But at very least, these tales bear witness to the fact that these hills are alive. We walk through them with honor and respect and deep gratitude for their shelter and for all of the spirits here that speak to us. So if you come across an ancient mound of pebbles along the winding trail, you might do well to add a stone of your own. There's no sense angering the little people while you are wandering through their neighborhood. That sense of power and mystery runs all through Appalachia. Let me close with a story as old as creation. The Cherokee say that when the earth was new, it was too hot for any living thing to dwell there. So, Creator sent a great bird to cool the earth with his wings. Now, you must know that in indigenous stories, birds are never just birds. They are always messengers from heaven because they soar closer to the heavens than we can ever go. So the wings of this great bird brought coolness and the possibility of life straight from the Creator. But in time, the great bird grew weary. He flew lower and lower until at last he began to touch the very earth with his wings. The valleys of Appalachia were formed on the downstroke of those mighty wings, and the mountains were formed as they swept up again. At last the Creator called the great bird to come home, lest the whole world should become mountains. Just a story? Perhaps. But every morning and every evening, as the sun kisses the ridges and hollers good morning and good night, you can still see where the wingtips touched the earth, and you can still feel the power of creation. The Creator made people for these Appalachian mountains. You call us the Cherokee, and the mountains were made for those people. Today, you are also those Appalachian people. The wings of God have shaped this land and created these Appalachian mountains for you. And now, at last, you have been made for these mountains. You are home in Appalachia.
Ego when do ye ho when do ye. Ego when do ye.